There's more fear present on this planet today than ever before. There's just no question about it. And I think that if we want to be thinking human beings, if we want to be what we in our heart of hearts know we're meant to be, then we must begin to understand the presence of this fear, the punishment inherent in it, in a new way. Imagine for a moment, calling on a variation of a story of mine, a favorite story. A reporter is at an opening of an amusement park, and it's got the largest, scariest roller coaster ride in the history of making such things. And when he takes the ride, everybody's screaming, and he notices that there's one young woman who just doesn't seem to be frightened the way everyone else is. And to make a long story short, he goes after the ride and interviews her, and he learns that, among other things, her father is the principal engineer for the park, and that prior to its opening, she took that ride so many times with her father that it finally stopped scaring her. We have to outgrow fear. I don't know really any other way to say it other than we have to outgrow fear. There is a kind of fascination if you watch. When people are talking about things they're afraid with, there's an excitement in them about it. Like a kid on a new ride that has all these unknown qualities, and you watch and, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to take place next? There's only one way that we, first as individuals, and then ultimately, God willing, as a planetary body, are ever going to get past this point where we are no longer governed by fear. And we are governed by fear. Basically, everything that the world does in order to protect itself is essentially protecting itself what it made formerly that frightened it. So here we are looking at a monster coming out of the very thing that we've created, and we're as fascinated with it as we are with everything else that's happened before. And how do we outgrow fear? How do we die to fear? And I suppose the real question is, how do we die to the fear of dying, to the fear of death? Because in the end, that's what all fear is about, is the discontinuation of what we take to be ourselves. We find the answer in our little story. We're never going to die to fear. We're never going to get over the idea that our existence is temporary and therefore subject to every passing event in time, until we meet that nature and see it in action, ride with it, if you will, thoroughly enough that we see for ourselves, you know what, there's nothing in this fear worthwhile. We don't need our fear to tell us how to protect ourselves. The instinct for preserving ourselves is inherent. What we need is to lose our fascination with fear, our enthrallment with it, yes, even our addiction to it. Because it won't be until we die to fear that we die to the idea of death itself. And we're never going to die to the idea of death itself until we begin to meet fear in the moment of its appearance within us, as required seemingly by what takes place in the world around us, and then quietly let it die within us, not giving it our heart, not giving it our mind, not giving it our will, but instead choosing in favor of the freedom, the only freedom that comes when we recognize that fear is not a friend, it has never done anything good for us, and that we can let it go. We can die to fear if we're willing to die to the part of ourselves that's so easily taken up with it, runs with it, and contaminates everything that it touches. In a practical sense, which is something that I always try to make possible, when you're around others or when you're around those parts of yourself and the fear-mongering begins, you become present to the fear. And instead of empowering it by lending all of your thoughts and feelings to it, you bring that fear into the awareness of yourself, where you will see a choice exists and only exists in that awareness, where you can suffer that fear. You can ride it out. You can ride it out. You can let it rise up, make its full-blown appearance, and then if you stay present, it passes, and that which is permanent, that which is eternal in you remains, and you'll see that fear was nothing but a false apparition, something that came to command you, but that can be changed, transformed, if you're willing to meet it consciously.